Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. I have been looking forward to this video for a while. A lot of work, a lot of time, a ton of film study, analytics deep dives, and pretty much all of the work you could imagine has gone into this video because it's my first 2026 NBA Draft Big Board. I'm going to present my top 45, and luckily for you guys, I'm using my special big board process. I typically save my special big board for the finality of the draft cycle, but I went full stop for you guys. I wanted to bring the best content I possibly could. So please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new and enjoy the content you see today. Also comment down below whether it's something about my big board. I have never had a perfect big board. In fact, I don't think anyone ever has. So the comment section is a great place for me to learn from you, hear your thoughts on specific prospects, and use it as a collaborative platform, which is one of the best parts of YouTube. I read every single comment. Now, my big board is a little bit different. It requires a little bit of explanation because no one else uses this style of big board, although I wish they did. It takes more work, it takes more time, but I think it is a very, very thorough method and a really great way to paint a picture on how I view these prospects because there are different levels. Now remember too, this is not a mock draft. That is different. I have a mock draft that came out yesterday. Make sure to check that out. But when it comes to the levels, you obviously have at the bottom something like the G League. You're a G League caliber player, or you should be playing in a different pro league. You have the two-way guys. You have the end of the bench, which is your 13th to 15th guy on the roster. They don't get consistent minutes. Depth piece, maybe they'll play a bit in the regular season, 30, 40 games, maybe 6 to 12 minutes a night. Then you have your role players. Those are the guys who are staples in your rotation. You have the starters, which is your top 5 or maybe 6 players, depending on how the coach builds out his rotations. You have your quality starters. I'm thinking about players who are really high quality players, top 3-ish on certain NBA rosters. And then we get into those nice criterion, the all-star caliber players, the all-NBA caliber players, future Hall of Famers. How about all-time greats and maybe even greatest of all time tier? Now, Victor Wembanyama was scratching the surface on that back in the 2023 NBA draft when I debuted this board. Since then, we have not had anyone else get close to that GOAT criterion in my evaluation process. We'll see how close Wemby actually gets when it's all said and done. He's off to a great start in his career. Not sure there's anyone in this draft class that's going to scratch that level of success, but when it comes to the visual appearance of my board, you're going to see these bar shapes. And what the bars do is give you a range of outcomes. The projected floor, or the 0th percentile outcome for a player, is at the bottom of the bar. So in this example here, my player number 1, player Y here, who goes to school Y, his projected floor is a high quality starter. And in this hypothetical, he would be number 1 in my final big board ranking, and his upside, his potential, would be a Hall of Famer. That's the 100th percentile outcome, and I could see any range of outcomes in this to be feasible. And then you look at player number 2, player Z, who is ranked number 2 on my big board in this example. Clearly, I feel more confident in a tighter range for that player. Maybe that has to do with which possible destinations they could end up in, or the skills that they provide. Maybe the ceiling isn't quite as high, but I feel really, really good about where that player could be. And then compare that to player number 3. And this is going to be a big question I get. How is it possible to have someone with a higher floor and a higher ceiling, but still ranked below someone? And the reasoning for that really comes down to what those middling outcomes look like, the value of what those outcomes provide. Not every single player is the same, and even if the upside and floor is even a little bit higher, maybe there's more positional value. For example, a center or a point guard might bring more positional value than an off-ball guard, for example. So those things do play into the board a little bit too. I'll try and be clear when we get there. And then I also use proximity in these boards. So you see the tiering, you see everything that you need, but then also with players Y, Z, and X here being so close together in proximity, and then player A having a little bit of space in between his bar and player X's bar, it shows kind of a tiering as well. So I feel like this board really encompasses everything that you would want in a big board. It's part of why I love this cycle. Now, if you do have questions, again, I know it's a little bit of a long-winded explanation, but I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page jumping into it here. But if you have any questions, comment down below. I'll answer all of them. Again, leave me your thoughts on the prospects down below. I want to see 100+ comments on the video today. That would be absolutely awesome. So let's jump into that big board now. We're going to be breaking out some data as well as we go. Also, a huge thank you to College Basketball Analytics. Link will be in the description down below for their website. Using promo code UTILITY will get you $30 off any of their packages. They have tremendous data. I'm going to be showing off the site a little bit in this big board as well. It's a super great site. I definitely recommend you check it out, especially with March Madness here now. All right, starting at number 45, I have Tounde Yessoufou out of Baylor. I've gone back and forth on him quite a bit as a prospect. He's been featured in a number of my first-round mock drafts, although he was not featured in my most recent first-round mock, and I do think there's a very good chance that he actually returns to school. That is what I myself would advise him to do, depending on how agents and executives around the league view him. But I do think this season has been a little bit bumpy up and down for him. His on-off swing numbers are not very good this season. And then also when you look at his actual shot diet, there is a little bit to be concerned about. Now, I do absolutely love his rim volume. That's part of one of the reasons I wanted to include him in my big board here in the top 45, even though there's a chance he returns to school for the 2027 NBA draft. But Tounde Yessoufou, very athletically gifted, extreme physical qualities. When you're watching him from afar, you get a little bit of a glimpse of Anthony Edwards in some ways, especially when he's wearing that number 5 like he was over the summer. But he's not Anthony Edwards caliber. The playmaking is nowhere near Anthony Edwards. I think he really struggles processing, especially reading weak side low man help and gap help defenders. He's kind of late getting off the basketball. He's one of the few players that we're going to talk about in today's video that actually has a negative assist to turnover ratio. So Tounde Yessoufou, I do think he's just a ways away in his development. You look at someone like Cam Whitmore, who slid on draft night coming out of Villanova, was projected to be a top 8, maybe 10 pick in his draft class, and then slid all the way down to number 20. The Rockets stopped his fall, but now traded him for essentially nothing to the Washington Wizards. Cam Whitmore stay in the league, might be on short notice as is, and I feel like I've done a lot of learning from that process. And I think Tounde Yessoufou, someone who probably 4 or 5 years ago with this exact same profile would have still remained at the very top 10, top 15 discussion of this draft. But I think as many draft folk have wisened up to this kind of process and what this kind of prospect presents, even though the physical tools are off the chart, the finishing, which is really, really good, still intrigues people. I don't see him as a likely first-round pick anymore at this point of the process. I do expect him, again, like I said, to return to school, but as of right now, he's number 45 on my board. He's still extremely young. There's a lot that he can build off of going forward, but we need to see significant playmaking development for him moving forward. Which leads me to number 44, Meleek Thomas. And you see his ceiling is a little bit below depth piece right now. This is another player who I think does need to return to school for Arkansas, especially next year without Darius Acuff Jr. likely back. Who knows what will happen with Billy Richmond, Trevin Brazil. There's going to be more opportunity on the ball alongside someone like DJ Wagner compared to his current backcourt mate in Darius Acuff Jr. And I think for Meleek Thomas in general, while the three-point shot making is exquisite, shooting over 40% from 3 this season, some really great stuff there, the downsides are pretty immense as well. The defensive numbers aren't great. The 2-point percentage is in the gutter right now. And I just have questions about his overall rim volume. He reminds me a little bit of a former Arkansas Razorback in some ways in Nick Smith Jr. Now, Nick Smith Jr. wasn't quite the flamethrower from 3 like Meleek Thomas has been this season, but he did a little bit more on the ball as a playmaker and creator for others as well. I think the root of where I get that comparison is their reliance on touch as finishers inside the arc. Nick Smith Jr. had to get to his floater a ton in his season with the Arkansas Razorbacks. It did not lend itself to a very good NBA career, and I have kind of similar concerns for Meleek Thomas right now. Although I do like his overall impact, I do think he has the requisite athletic traits. I do think he's a better athlete as well than Nick Smith Jr. was. But right now, I think just the overall skill set is a little, again, reliant on touch and shot making instead of continuous and consistent play styles and ability to finish at the rim, get all the way to the rim, play through traffic, get to the free throw line consistently. And I think there's just a lot that Meleek Thomas has to do yet to continue growing as an individual player. Sergio De Larrea at 43 on my board. He's had a very solid season for Valencia. Of course, when you're talking about these international prospects, they don't typically get the large sample size, the large volume that we're accustomed to seeing with some of these 4-star, 5-star freshmen in college, and that does make the process a little trickier. But Sergio De Larrea, from a per minute basis, is having a very good season over for Valencia. A 2-to-1 assist to turnover rate, significant 3-point improvement. Now again, you have questions about that volume, that sample size, but he's playing against professional level players and he's succeeding. He's getting to the free throw line a decent amount, nearly a 50% free throw attempt rate, which is quite good. Some really solid stuff for Sergio De Larrea. I do like his process and his processing. I think he's an interesting guard prospect going forward with decent positional size. He's a guy that down the stretch here, after I kind of conclude everybody and when we have some guys pull out of the draft, he could end up pretty high compared to where he sits right now at 43, depending on who stays and who goes in the NBA draft based on NIL packages. Obviously last year, Yaxel Lendeborg was a great example of a guy who was a surprise withdrawal from the 2025 NBA draft class, and this year we might have a few names as well in kind of that same bucket, and Sergio De Larrea could be a player that helps his case on my board with other guys returning to school and bypassing the draft for another year. Now we get to Braylon Mullins, and a lot of you probably were not expecting to see Braylon Mullins this early on in the video, all the way down at number 42 on my big board, while in a lot of my mock drafts he has been firmly in the low teens or high 20s, kind of ranging between that 17 to 22 range in a lot of my mock drafts. I'm having a little bit of a harder time buying in on Braylon Mullins for a few reasons. First of all, the on-off swings are not great for him. UConn has actually been significantly better this season with him on the bench than on the floor. He did deal with some injury stuff to begin the year, but then the three-point shot, while the volume is extremely great and obviously the fit into Dan Hurley's offensive system is quite good as well, I do have concerns about the actual productivity behind his shooting. Now it's a little unfair because he did miss time with an injury. You have to wonder how much that's impacted his overall shooting splits this season. There are some really good things still. The stock percentage is quite good, especially the steal rate where he's getting his hands on the basketball at a pretty good rate. He's been a quality piece in the cog that is the UConn Huskies machine right now. And I don't want to completely discredit him. He's a player who I think going into March Madness here, if he has a really hot streak from three, or if he continues to impact basketball in a winning way, he can maybe improve some of those on-off swing split numbers that we've looked at, and then really help his case as well moving forward. 41, I have Alex Condon. We're moving in a little bit closer to guys that I feel like are pretty comfortably going to be either end of bench or depth pieces, and at the very worst, fringe roster spot guys. So Alex Condon to me could very similarly play into a role like we've seen from Maxime Reynaud this year for the Sacramento Kings, where you can be kind of a DHO trail big, play off the top of the key, drive, kick. Maybe not so much kick for Alex Condon, but you're thinking about those handoffs, the fake handoff, dump offs down low on nice passes. Alex Condon's a very creative playmaker and facilitator, and that's shown up in a big way for Todd Golden and the Florida Gators over the last couple of years. And of course, he is a national champion as well. He's been highly, highly productive in college basketball. One important thing, even though, especially with how crowded the NBA is right now, there's so much talent to go across the 30 NBA teams, which is why expansion is really great news, by the way. Alex Condon could be one of those guys that, right, he maybe just doesn't get that opportunity that he should be able to live up to if he did get that chance. And that's one of the things about Maxime Reynaud playing for a bad Sacramento Kings team right now. He was given opportunity and minutes and time on the floor as a second-round pick, and you can't guarantee that for every single player here in this draft, which is one of the most difficult parts of draft evaluation. Who's genuinely going to get that fair shake for play time and opportunity to showcase their skills and talent on an NBA court when it's not guaranteed for everybody? You think about a guy like Leonard Miller, someone I liked many drafts ago, and he was basically just riding pine for Minnesota, playing for the Iowa Wolves more than anything until he was traded to the Chicago Bulls this past trade deadline. And then now he's gotten his opportunity to get out on the court, has had multiple double-digit scoring outings, high rebound counts, and doing a lot of stuff that we talked about pre-draft for him, which is great to see. And it's always hard to know who's actually going to get that fair shake or not early in their NBA careers. Leading us into Milan Momcilovic, who is a very, very fun player to talk about. An absolute flamethrower. Capital S sniper, capital S sharpshooter. This guy can fill it up. a 70% true shooting percentage this season. Ungodly three-point volume. His three-point attempt rate is through the roof. And he's making nearly half of them. 49% from three this season. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, why is he all the way down at number 40 on your big board if there's a player with really solid positional size, length, and can shoot it this well? Why is he so low? And I think the answer apparently becomes the defensive side of the floor and his impact in the other areas of the game. Even though he's an elite shooter and someone who's definitely going to draw a lot of attention, and for Iowa State's been such an awesome weapon for them running off of off-ball screens, I do think a really great fit for Momcilovic in the NBA would be landing in Utah in Will Hardy's system. Could do a lot of good there playing for the Jazz, but I really think the difficulties will come on the defensive end of the floor. How much does his shooting impact winning at the NBA level when there's a lot of really good shooters, maybe not quite to the level of Momcilovic, but when you have elite players on the court, are you drawing up plays for him like Iowa State is presently? And that's where the question, I think, becomes more concerning given some of his defensive deficiencies. The steal rate's really bad. The block rate's very, very low for his size and height. Kind of reminds me a lot of Davis Bertans. The former Laser who played for the Washington Wizards was traded to the Dallas Mavericks, part of that Kristaps Porzingis trade that I loathed many trade deadlines ago. But, Davis Bertans was an elite shooter, started his career in San Antonio, could really fill it up. Washington gave him a pretty payday. And then ultimately he didn't stick around on that contract because even though he could really shoot it, his other shortcomings were just too much to handle for him being a top 8 quality player, which is why Momcilovic, I think his shooting gives him a chance to possibly become a top 8 type of role player, or at least close to it down the road, but the consistency of that is going to be something I question at the very least. We get into two really solid players here at the college game in the state of Texas. We have Joseph Tugler from Houston, love me some JoJo Tugler, and then also JT Toppin for Texas Tech. Now, unfortunately, JT Toppin's been out with an injury, and that has kind of put him on the shelf a little bit, where we haven't gotten to see him rise his stock here down the stretch of the year, whereas Joseph Tugler's had to step up big time for Houston, whether it's foul trouble or guys missing games. He's been a real reliable heartbeat for them. I put these two guys right next to each other because I think there's a lot of similarities in their value. Both big, strong physical presences. Now, JT Toppin a little bit more offensively slanted right now in the college game, whereas JoJo Tugler's an awesome defensive player in the college ranks. Surprisingly for Tugler, his defensive rebounding numbers are not that great, although his offensive rebounding rate is incredible. And then for JT Toppin, you're really looking about his scoring diet. Very good around the rim, great touch, really solid go-to option right now at the college level for Texas Tech. Obviously, his role in the NBA would change, but you're thinking screen and dive big. How can he function in there? And I think for these two guys, while they're probably not going to shape up to be top 8 rotation players in their NBA careers, these are guys that could definitely hang around the NBA for a while, appear in 50 to 150 career NBA games, give you some quality minutes on 4 years, second-round rookie contracts, for example, as semi-reliable depth, whether it's getting on the offensive glass, rebounding the basketball a little bit defensively in JT Toppin's case, and then being play finishers off of some of the elite playmakers and scorers in the NBA. Those are the roles that I think are most likely reliable for JT Toppin and Joseph Tugler. All right, moving on here now to players 37 through 34 on my big board, and this is where you start to get into some really close groupings and some very difficult players to find confident rankings in. For me, Braden Smith is a guy that I think you really know what you're going to get, someone who has some floor general capabilities to him. Now, the NBA has kind of transitioned away from that in the last 5 to 10 years, where bench units aren't relying on a backup point guard to come in anymore. It's usually a staggering of star players. If you look at the Boston Celtics, one of Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, when they're healthy, is going to be on the court at all times. You look at, historically, teams like the Dallas Mavericks with Kyrie and Luka Doncic. One of those two guys will be on the floor at all times. I think with that in mind, a guy like Braden Smith, who has been an absolute genius running the point guard spot for Matt Painter and Purdue over the last 4 years, that guy doesn't have the value anymore that maybe he traditionally would have, with a super gaudy assist rate, very smart basketball player, runs the pick and roll extremely well, can play make off of a live bounce, create for others, initiate your offense, and I still think there's that value in the NBA for that. And some players like Braden Smith still do exist in the NBA. You think about the Tyus and Trey Jones of the world, you think about maybe to an even higher extent, someone like Ty Jerome, who has a little bit more juice and creativity off the bounce. He's really developed his game to a great level in the NBA. Braden Smith, there's still value for him, and I think, the fact that he's a little bit smaller is going to be a limiting factor, but his pull-up jump shooting, his scoring, there's still going to be some things that he can provide, especially from a pace and spacing standpoint, and it's always great to have high IQ players on the court, which is why I couldn't completely sell myself off of Braden Smith, which is why he's at number 37 on my first big board of the 2026 cycle. Tyler Tanner, man, has he been the talk of NBA Draft Twitter. A lot of discussion between him and Darius Acuff Jr. I think you see where I lie on this discussion. While I really like Tyler Tanner's skills, his ability to create off the bounce, his screen navigation defensively, his activity level with his hands, very good anticipation skills, there is a lot to love from a skill set perspective. It stands out in the eye test. It stands out in the analytics with his defensive numbers. He is a very good defensive college player. The issue is he's just so small. And even though I like what the analytics say, I don't hate what my eyes are telling me on the college floor, I still think there's going to be translation issues for him on the NBA level. Even with all of his defensive activity, he is still going to get picked on. And I was a huge believer in Reed Sheppard prior to the 2024 NBA draft, and I still think Reed Sheppard has lived up to a lot of what I spoke on about him in that draft class. We've seen Reed Sheppard get picked on in the NBA, even though he had incredible steal rate numbers, even though he was incredibly active defensively in the college game. And I think a lot of that same stuff's going to be true for Tyler Tanner. And unlike Reed Sheppard, Tanner isn't quite that level of three-point shooter. He doesn't take enough threes to warrant his size and the dilemmas that that's going to cause. Plus, he hasn't even been a super high usage player for Vanderbilt, who has more of an equal opportunity offense where the ball moves side to side, sets up a lot of their actions. Tyler Tanner hasn't been just the sole engine for Vanderbilt's success this season. While he has been their best player, I just have a hard time here selling myself on him being a top 15, top 20 player in this draft, let alone a top 5 player in this draft, which is surprisingly seen on many big boards right now. I like Tyler Tanner a lot as a player. It's a lot of fun watching him, but let's keep it a buck. I landed with him at 36. Karim Lopez at 35, I'm having a hard time selling myself on him as well. Now, I do think he can be a guy who sticks in the NBA. He's got the requisite positional size, decent athletic traits, and he's got a little bit of playmaking juice, which is, I think, one of the bigger sells on him as a player, his ability to play make off the bounce, whether that's as a short roller, which is what we're going to probably see him be asked to do a little bit in the NBA as a small-to-small screener, and then playing out of that short roll, making passes out of the nail, and then also attacking closeouts. And those are the two areas that I think he's going to be able to bring a lot of reliability in the NBA. Now, the concerns for me are, what if teams don't really close out hard on him? What if the jump shot never develops for him to be consistent floor stretcher off the ball? And then all of a sudden, once those closeouts dry up, so does that off the dribble stuff. And if that happens, that's where you're running into issues with, okay, maybe he can provide value for niche situations, but is he going to warrant 25 to 30 minutes a night when the going gets tough in the NBA? And for me, I feel like the answer to that is no for me. Now, he has been very productive, and I don't want to undersell what he's done in the NBL this year. He had one of the best ever seasons as a next star in the NBL program. So he's been doing some really nice stuff. He was very productive for New Zealand, even though it came in a lot of losing efforts. I don't want to completely sell him short and say he's not going to be an okay NBA player. But for me, I think especially like if you're looking at that top 8 role player as being a guy who's going to be a mainstay in a playoff rotation, Karim Lopez has a lot of work to do. And this is one of the things. I don't have a crystal ball. I've put in all the time and effort, and I've studied all the numbers and watched the tape. I can take what I know right now and project that going forward, but it really is up to these players individually. If they work hard enough, if they put in enough hours in the gym, enough time in film study themselves, if they adapt and evolve and grow their game, they can outweigh and move past what I'm projecting for them right now. And I'm hoping for all of them that they do, because the more great players we have in the NBA, the better. It makes the league a better sport to watch. It makes the games a whole lot more fun to enjoy. And I'm hoping Karim Lopez is one of those guys that does prove me wrong. Ebuka Okorie, one of the hardest guys to nail down in this cycle, because boy is he electric. He's got some really great dynamism on the basketball. He's got tremendous crossover, tremendous behind the back. He can split the pick and roll incredibly effectively. He's one of the most fun players to watch in this entire draft class because of his tools with the ball in his hands. The issue is that the NBA is one of those very, very tricky sports where it's not just about the volume, and he's got a lot of it this year at Stanford. It's also about the opportunity and how many touches are you going to get a game. And while there's been a lot of very talented players who can put the ball in the deck and put the ball in the hoop at a high level, they don't all get afforded that same opportunity. I talked about it earlier with Braden Smith, how the NBA has shifted away from floor general type players. It's also shifted away from those electric scoring sixth men. And Ebuka, Okorie, unlike some of the guys we're going to talk about in the top 10 on my big board here, he might not get the same opportunity as a player like Darius Acuff Jr., who's going to be drafted higher than him. And even though there's some similarities in their play style, even though there's some real similarities in their off-the-dribble scoring and production this year, Darius Acuff Jr. has been doing it in the SEC. That definitely carries some weight. And then also the draft slot's going to be just dramatically different. Ebuka Okorie has not been in any of my first-round mocks. At this point, I'm not hearing a ton of buzz for him as a first-round player. And even though I like the skills, I like the tape, and the analytics don't look terrible either, he is slight. He's a little bit skinnier than Darius Acuff as well. And I think just the opportunity is going to be a real negative factor here for his opportunity in the NBA. Again, I'm hoping he gets that shot. I really think this kid can fill it up. And down the stretch of the year, who knows what happens, but he is so much fun to watch play basketball. Moving into 33, we have Thomas Haugh, and this one's going to be another surprise for people. Thomas Haugh has been listed as a potential lottery pick by many. I know he's top 10, top 15, top 20 on a lot of people's big boards. I found myself putting him at 33 here, even though I like the idea of Thomas Haugh a lot. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Dean Wade in the role that he's played for the Cavaliers alongside Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And you think about Thomas Haugh in that front court next to Alex Condon and Rueben Chinyelu. You're saying, okay, well, kind of see the value of that size. Florida's been a tremendous team. They won the national championship last year. They maybe could repeat this year as well. They've been absolutely awesome all season long outside of the SEC tournament. Florida is a real force to be reckoned with, and I don't want to diminish Thomas Haugh's involvement in that, but if you look at his shooting splits, you look at his overall on-off impact, how much of a driving force is Thomas Haugh of the winning in Florida, or is he a contributor to the winning? And how does that translate to the NBA if his jump shot isn't consistently falling? And that's where I think the comparison that I mentioned just a little bit ago to Dean Wade is very sensible. When Dean Wade's jump shot's not falling, his impact seems to crater a little bit, even though he's a quality defensive player. Obviously, the size at that position is so valuable. The versatility stands out. His playmaking off of the live dribble. All of the little nuanced details that Dean Wade does, Thomas Haugh does a lot of as well. But I just have a lot of questions about the jump shot, where in his junior season in college basketball, it just has never been consistent or reliable. And if you're drafting him in the top 14, you're making a huge gamble on him becoming a reliable three-point shooter when the three-point line becomes a little bit further out. And can he make that adjustment? And can he not only adjust to the NBA three-point line, but become a better shooter than he has been in the college game? Those are going to be huge questions. I do like his versatility. I think there's going to be some good stuff he can bring in the NBA, which is why I do see some upside as a possible top 8 role player for a team. He's a really solid good player for sure. But I do have questions along with all of the great stuff that he does. Number 32, we're going to stay on the topic of the Florida Gators here with Rueben Chinyelu, a player that has been incredibly fun to watch. He has been dominant on the glass this season. And one of my favorite things about watching him at Florida is some of the versatility that he brings defensively for Todd Golden, where they're allowing him to switch out into space at times. And the Gators can get away with that because they have Alex Condon and Thomas Haugh behind him. That's one of the big benefits of having more size. The more size you have, the better, whether it's the college game, the high school game, or at the NBA level itself. Skilled size is awesome, and versatile size is even better. Rueben Chinyelu, extremely versatile. He's got really great foot speed. He's comfortable out in space. He can contest without fouling. And then again, he rebounds, he blocks shots. He does a lot of those great things that you want to see from a big man in general. So I think there's a lot of great tools to work with here for him. He ranks very well percentile-wise in a lot of those areas. And then I also think when you're looking at Rueben Chinyelu as a player, there are some projection questions that I do have, though. What if he lands in a situation where there's not another true big man next to him like Alex Condon? Are you comfortable? And this is one of the big questions about scheme in the NBA. Everyone wants those switchy bigs, the guys who can go out and defend out in space. While there are a lot of benefits to that, the question then becomes, okay, well, if we switch him out onto the perimeter, who's our rim protector behind him if he does get beat? Or guess what? If the ball swings off of that isolation, now who's at the rim protecting off that if Chinyelu's in gap help at that point in time? And that's where you really need to have another quality big on the floor, whether it's a big power forward or an actual another center. Think about Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert when they were playing together. You think about that Mobley and Allen pairing that we've already talked about. The more bigs, the better, because it allows your versatile big, aka the Evan Mobley type, to really thrive as a roamer and fill all of your different gaps and needs, whether it's switching out on the perimeter or just roaming off of a non-shooter, protecting the rim. They can be all over the court, but if you don't have that extra big next to them, there are some limitations as a result. So it'll be interesting to see where Rueben Chinyelu actually goes in the NBA draft. I think we'll have a lot better answers to a lot of those questions depending on where he's drafted. But I do think he's going to have a nice impact on the glass as a shot blocker. And then if he lands in the right situation, that's when you can have some real fun with the defensive schematics of switching him out into space. We'll talk about that as well again here very shortly with Flory Badunga. Moving on to number 31, I landed here on Koa Peat, and I do think there's a very good chance that at the very worst he is a depth piece or maybe just an end of bench player, but more likely than not will end up as a top 8 role player on a team. Now I do have him a little bit of a ways away from the starter category yet, and while he's been starting all season long for Arizona, began his college career with an absolute bang, a 30-point game to start his college career, and has been very, very good for a great college program in Arizona. I do think there are some significant questions that I have regarding his NBA playability, given the fact that he's not an outside jump shooter. His mid-range jump shot has been a little horrid this season. And I think the offensive process in a whole, if he's not just a screen and roll or catch on the cut, catch on the move type of player, I have questions about his functionality. Now, he does a nice job playing off of stampede drives. You obviously can put him in the low post, but that requires a certain kind of big man next to him if you're looking at a stretch big. And obviously Arizona is a dominant defensive team. They have a big man in Mo Krivas alongside him that really helps protect the paint. They have some really good guard play in Jaden Bradley, and then Braden Burries as well. So there's a lot of talent there for Arizona. It's not just obviously Koa Peat driving the winning there. So that's why even though you're looking at guys like the Florida Gators that I've talked about already and obviously Koa Peat, they've been a part of some great college programs. You might say, well, how are they not higher if all they're doing is winning in college? There's a lot of context to the winning, and it's not just one guy or two guys driving the entirety of the winning. It's the system, it's the coaching, and it's also the collection of talent more than just one individual. And I think for Koa Peat specifically, the downsides in his overall profile as an on-ball scorer, the processing. Now, I do think the passing is at a decent spot, and his physical frame is obviously going to be one of the most intriguing things that will keep him as a first-round pick. He's been in every single first-round mock I've done this year. He will be drafted in the first round, although at this point in time, depending on who stays and who doesn't stay in the 2026 NBA draft, he might not actually finish with a first-round grade on my final big board. Number 30, I have Christian Anderson here out of Texas Tech. He has been awesome this season. Now, from a size perspective, that's going to be one of the big questions. And again, the opportunity is going to be another concern for me. Very likely we could see him stay in college basketball with the NIL situation right now in college hoops and the transfer portal. Whether he stays or goes from Texas Tech, it's very likely he would get an absolute bag either way by staying in college. So he could be one of those guys that forgoes the 2026 NBA draft to remain in college hoops, and it would be a good decision for him if he does, because I think he will get paid very handsomely, probably make more than he would on his NBA rookie contract. But nonetheless, I have him at 30 right now because his processing as a passer is tremendous. Now, I do think you see some of those size concerns pop up with his turnover count, especially against some really high levels of competition. He's racked up some very high turnover games, whether it's 5, 6, 7 turnovers in certain settings and situations. Those are, it has been problematic for him at times, and they have popped up here and there. But he also makes a lot of high leverage plays, right? A lot of assists. He generates a lot of really good offense for Texas Tech. And when JT Toppin went down, he's the one who had to step up big time as well. So I've been very impressed with the overall tape. He bombs a ton of threes. That's one of the biggest things I love about him too. The three-point attempt rate is through the roof, which is very, very good. And I do have a lot of optimism about him as an individual player. Again, I do think just right now, and it shouldn't really be surprising. You think about the frequency of humans who are 6 foot to 6'5" compared to the frequency of humans that are 7 foot to 7'2". There's just more humans who are between 6 foot and 6'5", which makes the guard position in the NBA probably the most competitive across the entire league, because there's just more human beings in that height range, which means you're going to have a wider collection of people who could pop up with this skill or that skill, and it gives you some of the greatest players in the sport at that guard position, which makes it very hard to carve out minutes, find that role, find that opportunity. So even with Christian Andersen being as skilled as he is, I do have questions about really what that opportunity is going to look like at the NBA level, but I do see a future where he could be a top 8 role player for a team, really provide value off the bench for them. I think there are some starter skills in there as well, like his processing is quite good, makes some unbelievable passes out of pick and roll, and also reading the weak side of the court. So he's very daring. He's made some huge plays throughout his college career so far. He's been an absolute baller. Could stay in college, but we'll see what happens here for Texas Tech moving forward. Number 29, I have Allen Graves out of Santa Clara. This has been an analytics darling. I do see there being some real top 8 potential. He also could be a guy who waits till the 2027 NBA draft when the top isn't quite as loaded as the 2026 draft appears right now. Allen Graves could maybe be best served by either staying at Santa Clara for another year, gaining a bigger role for them on both ends of the floor, or transferring, getting a bigger NIL package from a bigger school, and then proving himself on a bigger level than the West Coast Conference. So we'll see what happens with Allen Graves, but as of right now, I have him at number 29. I'm very intrigued by the analytic profile, where he's very adept at shooting, some really good playmaking numbers in there. The stock rates are through the roof as well. His defensive impact as a whole hasn't been quite consistent. The Broncos have actually been better this year with him on the bench defensively than with him on the court, but impact doesn't always show up in super consistent manners, and some of that's because of shooting luck. So right now I would still have a lot of belief in Allen Graves going forward. He's got some unique guard skills at his size, definitely a talented player, and someone who I could sell myself on in the top 30 of this draft class. Number 28, I have Isaiah Evans. I just can't quit on Isaiah Evans. Earlier this year, I was like, I just don't think he's probably going to finish top 30 on my big board. And then the last couple of weeks, I'm like, oh, he's creeping back up there. I just can't quit on Isaiah Evans. It's like nicotine to me. He's just awesome, man. He shoots the ball so well. He's an absolute laser from behind the arc. Now, he hasn't connected on as many as Milan Momcilovic, but he's a little bit better defensively. And that's a big testament to his work ethic, because had I said that a year ago, you would have laughed at me. Isaiah Evans was not a good defender at all a year ago as a true freshman for the Duke Blue Devils, but in the absence of Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple this year, and now as a true starter for this Blue Devils team, he's had to step up big time defensively, and he's done that. His block rates improved, his steal rates improved. He does a much better job actually sitting down and defending. So it's not just the analytics that suggest that, it's also the eye test. When you watch the film, he's doing a much better job staying in front, keeping his chest in front of the offensive player. And then obviously the value he provides to Jon Scheyer's offense as a movement shooter, whether it's flying off of flare action, splitting off, takes a couple slips here and there. It's been pretty effective at the rim as well. You'll see his shot chart here. Just a lot of volume all over the place, and specifically from behind that three-point line, which is going to be his biggest sell in the NBA. Now, I think comparisons to maybe a guy like Isaiah Joe is probably the most sensible for Isaiah Evans. And that's a really good player. He's been super valuable for OKC, and if you have the smart coach like the Thunder do with Mark Daigneault, they can find ways to employ these shooters and get value out of them on the court. Isaiah Evans, very, very good in a lot of different things, whether it's ghost action, he's actually can sit in and screen a couple of times. There's just a lot that he does. He's a quality athlete as well. This is one of the things about shooters, right? Someone like Momcilovic, who we talked about earlier, maybe isn't the best athlete. Isaiah Evans, still not an elite athlete. It's not like he's a 100th percentile athlete or anything, but he's a quality athlete. He's an NBA caliber athlete. So can he return some kind of value like a guy like Malik Beasley did in the NBA for a while? I definitely think that's possible. So having Isaiah Evans at number 28, I'm still very bullish on him, very excited about his potential as an NBA player, and I do think very likely we could see him at the very worst being a top 10 player on a team's rotation, but more likely than not, he'll end up in the top 8 of a rotation, although probably not being an NBA starter. He can provide value and impact off the bench, especially in altering a team's shot diet for the better by upping its three-point attempt rate. Number 27 here, still in that top 8 role player tier, I have Morez Johnson Jr., who I do think is deservingly drawing a lot of comparisons to Detroit Pistons big man Isaiah Stewart. Now, for me, Morez Johnson's been a part of an awesome trio in the front court for the Michigan Wolverines this year, alongside Ademara and alongside Yaxel Lendeborg. And that has really lent itself to Michigan becoming an awesome defensive team where they stymie drives, they shut down people at the rim for the most part. And Morez Johnson's had a huge impact in that area while also getting to flex his offensive game. He's incredibly strong, has dabbled in shooting some three-pointers this season as well, which I like to see for his own individual development, has been quality around the rim, and I think that's a testament to Dusty May as well, who does a really nice job drawing up and creating some X's and O mismatches out of play design that allows Michigan to play so big while still being able to find easier looks at the rim and create shots all over the floor for their 3 different forwards and bigs collectively on the court. So a lot of credit to Morez Johnson. He's been a hugely impactful player for Michigan. I know they came up short in the Big Ten Conference Championship game, but Morez was really, really good all season long. I think he'll have a huge impact going into the NCAA tournament as well. Very excited to see where March Madness takes us. Again, things are subject to change. March Madness will change maybe my perspective or opinion on a couple of things. Some of these guys still have maybe 7 games left in their college career, so we'll see what happens, right? Obviously, more basketball has to be played yet, which could kind of shape our thinking, change what we see and how we view a player in what lens. Now, for me, it probably won't alter things too drastically, but there's still games to be played, and we're going to keep our eyes on everything. Number 26, I have Dame Sarr. This is in, again, that top 8 role player. But I do think now I don't have him listed as a starter because I think the offensive game is just too limited at this point in time. He's basically just a catch-and-shoot player out of the corner and a transition play finisher. There's really nothing that he does outside of advantage right now offensively, and even the stuff in advantage isn't pretty. That's why he doesn't have starter caliber tier. That's why his bar's not stretching up here. But I do think his defensive impact could return starter type of value where he can defend the ball. He can guard the opposing team's best player, which is why I have him top 30 on my big board right now, despite being so offensively deficient. Now, I do think you're looking at a guy who is going to be a little bit of a one-way liability, and that's why his floor is also as low as it is, significantly lower than Morez Johnson and Isaiah Evans in this case. But I do think Dame Sarr, really intriguing player, great hip fluidity, one of the best screen nav defenders, and super impactful defensively when it comes to forcing misses. He maybe doesn't have the most gaudy steal and block rates, and people will wonder, okay, well, what's his defensive impact? Forcing misses. And that's a big thing for Duke. They have one of the best defenses in the entire nation. They've got 2 good bigs behind him in Patrick Ngungba, who missed the ACC tournament, and then also Cameron Boozer. So he's got size behind him, but he does a great job challenging at the point of attack, forcing a ton of misses, making it difficult to initiate offense for the other teams, and he can take your best player out of the game at times too. I've talked a lot about him and Jaden McDaniels and comparing McDaniels' role for the Minnesota Timberwolves defensively to what Dame Sarr might be able to do as a bigger, longer, athletic, shifty, mobile, fluid wing who can move, get above screens, chase under, chase over, do a lot of different things for you, and I think that's really what I'm selling myself on with him. Even all of the offensive deficiencies, he's a significantly worse offensive player than Jaden McDaniels was coming out of University of Washington. But Dame Sarr, a really, really great defensive player. Honestly, I thought he should have been the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Did not get that award, but boy, is he an awesome, awesome player, and I think he's going to return a lot of value throughout his NBA career for his draft slot. Number 25, I have Nate Ament here. Now, I do have him in that possible starter upside, but not a ton. I think you're looking at maybe the top 5 percentile outcomes for him as a true starting caliber player. The analytics are not pretty for Nate Ament, specifically when you look at where his shots come from. Way too much mid-range. His three-point attempt rate is not pretty at all right now for what I was kind of hoping to see for him under Rick Barnes. But unsurprisingly, when before the year Rick Barnes calls him the next Kevin Durant, surely we were going to get a lot of mid-post volume. And unfortunately, Nate Ament isn't the shooter that Kevin Durant is. Shocker to anyone who was confused or surprised by that. It's honestly absurd. Now, the one thing that Nate Ament's going to have going for him is he's got very long arms. He's a tall player. He's got kind of that body type, that slender frame that we've seen get drafted in the top 10 or in the lottery pretty consistently over the last 10 to 15 to 20 years because everyone wants to draft Kevin Durant reincarnate. Now, Nate Ament, like I'm saying, is not that. He is not going to be that, but he's going to be given a lot of opportunity. And I do think if he gets into the NBA and can reshape his shot diet, shift the way that he plays, and turn him away from a high usage player like he's been for Tennessee into a catch and shoot, catch and attack closeouts type of player, that's where you can maybe extract more value than what his current college playstyle archetype is like. Now, it's hard to bet on players changing their tendencies so dramatically, but it's going to have to be adapt or die in the NBA, in my opinion, for Nate Ament, which is why I'm still comfortable to maybe bet on there being some starter upside, because if he does tweak his playstyle, if the shooting splits improve, that's going to be a huge telltale sign. Now, part of why I'm concerned still is the actual rim volume. Scoring wasn't great this year, not very efficient on rim attempts relative to others in this draft class. His overall 2-point percentage this year was just about 44%. So some of that was playing through injury, playing through some difficulties throughout the year, and also the usage. But there's still a lot of uphill battle to go, which is why I have Nate Ament at number 25 right now. Number 24, Flory Bidunga out of Kansas. Like I talked about with Rueben Chinyelu, who I had down at 32, there are going to be some challenges for Flory Bidunga. He's a little bit smaller, doesn't rebound quite as well as Rueben Chinyelu either, but the biggest sell for him is his defensive versatility, who he can defend. And I think the best selling point for him was Kansas's matchup against BYU earlier this year, where Bidunga was actually the initial primary matchup on AJ Dybantsa, and he did tremendously well in that matchup, made pretty much every single touch that Dybantsa had very difficult, presented a ton of length, size, obvious physicality. Bidunga is extremely strong, and at the college level, he's been able to showcase a lot of touch. They drop it down to him in the post, plays with his back to the basket, and while that's not going to be a consistent play style type for him in the NBA, I do think it gives us a good picture of, hey, what can this player do as a finisher? And as he transitions into more of a traditional high ball screener, you're going to see him function as a roll man. He's got the athletic traits to catch above the rim and finish, lob dunks. He has a very good block rate in college, so that's hopefully going to translate to him being a decent rim protector at the NBA level. Again, the question though is, how do you unlock that defensive versatility if he's going to be your center? And notice I don't have real starter upside for him. I just see him as a likely top 8 rotation player. If he's going to be on the court as your 5-man, if he's switching out onto the perimeter or defending perimeter players initially, who's then protecting the rim for you? Who's your drop coverage big man? Who's stymieing the paint if Bidunga's out on the perimeter? And that's where the offensive game doesn't maybe match the defensive versatility, just like we talked about with Chinyelu. With the two of them not being volume 3-point shooters or floor stretchers at this point, it's hard to envision them playing next to other rim protectors consistently in the NBA unless they land in a special situation, like Denver next to Nikola Jokic, like San Antonio next to Victor Wembanyama, maybe next to a guy like Miles Turner or Karl Anthony Towns. But you know, the list is pretty thin there. And while I think Bidunga and Chinyelu can be really awesome in a variety of roles, maybe Golden State would be an awesome place too for these guys to land next to Draymond. Going into the twilight of Steph's career, there's definitely some functionality there, but it's going to be kind of matchup specific and scheme dependent on where they land to completely maximize who these guys can be with that defensive versatility in mind. Moving on to number 23. This is a guy I have slowly fallen in love with as a draft prospect this year, Billy Richmond III. Now, his floor is dramatically lower than a number of these other guys in a similar way that we talked about with Dame Sarr, where that floor could actually dip even below depth piece to just being an end-of-bench caliber player potentially, like we talked about with Dame Sarr. Now, I think Billy Richmond's kind of at the pinnacle of that tiering. but someone who's probably not going to return starter value regardless, and it really stems from his inability to shoot the basketball right now. He's just not a three-point shooter. Not only is he a hesitant shooter, but when he does actually shoot it, he has not been effective as a shooter. Now, he's had moments in the SEC tournament, hit a couple big threes for Arkansas en route to an SEC tournament championship. He's been incredibly fun. One thing that he does extremely well is connect in transition. He's a creative passer, whether it's flowing into dribble handoffs, which he's done a number of times this year for Arkansas, or creating off the bounce a little bit, especially as a downhill finisher. Throws a few lobs to Trevin Brazil and Meleek. And there's a lot of fun stuff that we've gotten to see Arkansas do, especially as of late. I do like Billy Richmond III, and for me, I kind of landed on this hybrid comparison of a little bit of Luke Mbah-a-Moute. There's a pull for our old heads who think back to some old Luke Mbah-a-Moute run. A little bit of Herb Jones because of the playmaking juice. There's just a little bit there. I think it's a little bit hopeful to view him completely like Herb Jones, right? Herb Jones has been a starting caliber wing in this league. Really great player. I don't think Billy Richmond III is in that tier of player, but there's some shades of Herb Jones to him. And then also Derrick Jones Jr. in terms of the vertical athlete that Billy Richmond is. He's not quite as explosive. He doesn't take flight in the same way that Derrick Jones Jr. does. But Derrick Jones Jr., Luke Mbah-a-Moute, Herb Jones, they kind of all came in with the same questions. What does the jump shot look like? How do they find value outside of just hopefully knocking down wide open catch and shoots? And it's a little bit of playmaking. It's defending the basketball. It's impacting the ball defensively. And Billy Richmond's been doing that in a big way. If you think about the context for Arkansas, he's starting in a lineup that's alongside Trevin Brazil, Nick Pringle, Darius Acuff Jr., and Malik Thomas. He is kind of the backbone of their defense at the point of attack. Now, Trevin Brazil's made a lot of really nice plays defensively, especially as of late. Nick Pringle and Malik Ewan have had some impact as well defensively. But really the point of attack defense has kind of fallen on the shoulders of Billy Richmond III this year. He has delivered, and I've begun to really start to view him as a prospect ready for the 2026 draft. Earlier this year, I was kind of looking at him as a potential 2027 guy, and as the years progressed, I've started to say, hey, why isn't he ready this season? And as you can tell on my big board here, I'm quite optimistic about the impact he could have as a potential two-way wing in the NBA. Now, I do think, again, that jump shot's going to be a potential limiting factor. We have to see some growth from him, which is why maybe waiting to 2027 could still be in the cards. But I still think, like, if he tests the waters and shoots well in draft workouts, you could see him really open some eyes and possibly even be a first-round pick. If not a first-round pick, a high second-round pick. Very comparable to some awesome wings that we saw in last year's draft, someone like Adu Thiero or Rasheer Fleming, who are both second-round picks. Billy Richmond III could maybe fall into that category as well. Number 22, I have Alex Karaban. Now, I don't have the starter upside for him, as I think many of you would have presumed or guessed going into this, but I think it's a real lock that this guy finds his way into a top 8 rotation role for a good team. You think about his impact that he's had on the best UConn teams. This is his 4th consecutive year as a starter for the UConn Huskies. He won 2 national championships as a freshman and sophomore, playing alongside Donovan Clingan, playing alongside Jordan Hawkins, playing alongside Stephon Castle, playing alongside some really quality players. Tristan Newton, another one that comes to mind. Alex Karaban, when he's been next to talent, all of his skills pop way more often. It's because he's not a primary creator. He's not an initiator of offense. But what he does for you is he helps you win games by doing the little things, whether it's blocking shots in transition, being a consistent rotation guy. He always posts a very impressive block rate. His assist numbers are always pretty solid because he's a very smart, adept swinger of the basketball when it comes to a swing series or a boom-boom series on ball reversals, rotations. He's going to make that extra pass time in, time out, and he can really shoot it as well. So he's going to draw those closeouts. He's going to force defenders on the weak side to play between two, make them commit to the ball, and then he'll make that extra pass to beat you. Everything else Karaban does promotes, produces winning. And I think it's going to be stupid when an NBA team gets him in the second round and they're like, and everyone acts surprised 2-3 years from now when this guy's positively impacting winning. I said the same thing about Baylor Shireman. He fell to pick number 30. I said the same thing about AJ Mitchell. He fell to the Thunder in the second round in 2024. Alex Karaban wins. This guy is going to be an awesome player in the NBA. Think about someone right now who's struggling shooting in the NBA. Portland. what would help Portland? Getting another player who's connective, who can shoot off of drive and kick opportunities. Alex Karaman would play real minutes right now for the Portland Trailblazers and help them win more games. This guy is going to be a very good NBA player. He's not going to be a great one. He's not going to be a quality starter or anything like that. But he's going to promote winning, and I can't overlook the fact that he's a quality player who's going to be a connective piece in a winning DNA for a team that wins a lot in the NBA. I just can't quit him. Number 21, I have Ademara here, guy who I do actually see maybe just a little tad bit of starter upside. And right next to him, I have Kristanak Jr. So these are two players who have a little bit of that starter upside to me. Now, Ademara is a little bit more, I think, niche in his potential role in the NBA because he's a little less scheme versatile. You're going to probably put him in deep drop. He's going to have struggles defending out in space. The game against Purdue, specifically in the Big Ten Championship, really did test him a lot. Braden Smith did a great job coming off of ball screens, isolating him out in that space, and then attacking outside of his hips to make him change direction. And he struggled a bit with that. He's also, as tall and long as he is at 7'3", he's also going to struggle a little bit with physicality because he's a little slight. You can get into his chest, bump him back a little bit, open up your finishes at the rim that way. But the rim numbers are still very, very good for him defensively. I also think there's a lot of offensive game that's still a little bit untapped. Now, it does come with a little bit of a hefty turnover rate, but there is some processing power here for him in a positive way, where you can look at Ademara and say, hey, we can run some unique actions with him out of the nail. He can help us against zone defenses a little bit, which are becoming a little bit more and more prevalent in the NBA once again. And then also just the rim defensive value, right? Even though there's ways to pick apart deep drop coverage, the entire point of it is to limit shots at the rim to begin with. And when you have a guy who's 7'3" with gaudy block rate numbers all 3 years of his college career, you can say, hey, this guy's going to at least provide value for us in 4 to 6 minute bursts at the very worst, which is why I think whichever team does draft Ademara on draft night here in 2026 is going to feel pretty good about the long-term result. Probably not going to see a huge investment, probably won't be a top 18, top 20 pick on draft night, but he's going to return really quality value. I have him at number 21 on my board, but I wouldn't be shocked if he returns top 15, top 16 value in this year's draft, just given his size, the skills, the rim finishing, and then also the rim deterrence and shot blocking as a whole. Whereas Kristanak, a little bit different. This is a guy we have to question the tendencies a little bit because the skills are unbelievable. And just from an eye test standpoint, you watch Kristanak Jr. play and you say, okay, what can this guy not do? He can shoot long twos. He's got very good touch around the rim. If he was playing in the mid-2000s, this would be like an NBA All-Star because of his touch, the areas of the areas of the floor he scores from. He can step out behind the three-point line already, knock down some outside jump shots, and oh, by the way, he's devastatingly good at the rim when he actually has opportunities there at the rim. Those are a little few and far between right now for him, and that's where we need to see maybe a little bit of rewiring for him offensively. We need him to probably figure out the analytics side of basketball a bit more and say, hey, every 17-footer you take, yeah, you could make it, but shooting 30-ish something % on those shots doesn't move the needle for a championship team offensively. So even when Kristanak is hitting shots in the mid-range area, it's still not the type of shot that promotes winning at the highest level in the NBA. Everyone knows that. It's the unfortunate truth. But the mid-range shot is devalued, and Kristanak Jr. is going to have to deal with a little bit of playstyle shift and adjustment. And, sometimes it sounds like that should be an easy shift. That should be an easy thing for players to just realize, figure out, and toggle their playstyle. But it takes multiple years to kind of reconfigure who they are. Now, he's had impact on defense. He has a pretty impressive block rate. He gets his hands on the basketball, and I think the activity level has been very, very good. Kristanak's another guy. I have him at number 20 right now. I could see him very possibly returning lottery value. He's extremely young, and if you have the right coach in place and the right talent around him to influence his shot diet positively, he could turn into an absolutely awesome player in the NBA for sure. Number 19, I have Hannes Steinbach, who has, in my opinion, a significantly lower ceiling than Kristanak Jr., but also a higher floor because one thing that he does extremely well is rebound the basketball. He gets on the glass very, very well, both the offensive glass and the defensive glass. You look at his analytic numbers there, just unbelievable. He rebounds the ball very, very well, and it's led to him being a super productive player in the traditional box score sense with points, rebounds, consistently being a double-double machine for University of Washington. He's been an elite force in the Big Ten this year, and I think specifically Steinbach is going to be a guy that it's going to be very likely we see him as a possible lottery pick. He's got some really tremendous skills. Some comparisons for him have been guys like Mo Wagner, where Steinbach can come in, be an offensive force for you off the bench a little bit, be a high pick and roll, screen role player, get on the offensive glass. You think about a team like Houston right now who has struggled so dramatically offensively in a lot of different ways, yet because of their offensive rebounding value, they still rank as one of the better offenses in the league. They consistently bail themselves out by getting on the glass, creating second chance opportunities. And Hannes Steinbach, at the very worst, is going to be someone who can generate more of those for you. He's very good with his body, does a nice job fighting for positioning, winning box out battles, securing boards both on the offensive and defensive glass. And then from there, that's when you can kickstart transition opportunities or get kickouts for second chance opportunities, whether it's a putback of Steinbach's own, or you're looking at maybe kickouts for three-point attempts, or just resetting your possession in general. Yaxel Lendeborg. I'm sure this is a player a lot of people wanted to know where I'd have ranked. Now, he is an older prospect. Thought he was going to come out in the 2025 draft out of UAB. Chose to go to Michigan instead. Could not pass up that NIL package, and I don't blame him. He's in the running for National Player of the Year because his RAP-M is through the roof. His BPM is incredible. A lot of the advanced analytics really love this guy. And there is a lot to like. Now, a lot of people are going to have him maybe top 10 on their boards, top 12, at least lottery. For me, I came up just a little bit lower, and I think there's going to be a little bit of difficulty for him adjusting to the NBA. We've seen older prospects in general kind of get to the NBA right away, hit the ground running, and then they just don't really take off from there. And I think Yaxel Lendeborg might be in that same situation where he's going to get in right away. He's going to impact the game defensively as a rebounder. He'll be in the right place at the right time. He's a great processor of the game, both offensively with his assist turnover rate. Very, very smart player with the ball in his hands. Just plays within himself consistently. But then defensively, he closes out possessions as a rebounder. He blocks shots, gets in the passing lane a little bit, disrupts the ball. Does a lot of things that check a lot of boxes, which is why his BPM and RAP-M are so high. And from an eye test standpoint, there's a lot to like, right? He's taken strides forward as a three-point shooter this year, playing for Dusty May. And for a player to scale up from a program like UAB to go to a big-time program like Michigan in the Big Ten and to improve your play is very, very impressive. So I don't want to undersell this kid. I think there's still a really good player here to work with. For me, a guy that kind of comes to mind a little bit is Josh Hart. Now, he's bigger than Josh Hart. He's physically stronger than Josh Hart. But I think the versatility in his skill set is going to be very Josh Hart-esque, where he can push and transition a little bit. He can make reads with the ball in his hands. He can cut. He can finish on the offensive glass as a putback guy. Just does a little bit of everything. Now, Josh Hart, the biggest MO and bugaboo for him has been the three-point shooting come playoff time. And that'll be the question for Yax as well. Can he consistently knock down jump shots? Will he get respected when he doesn't have the ball in his hands? We've seen in the big moments this year for Michigan, the semifinal game in the Big Ten Conference Tournament, knocked down a pretty big shot to win it for Michigan. So he stepped up in big moments, always has, even going back to his time at UAB. So I don't want to undersell him at all as a player. That's why I still have him in the top 20 on my board. But I am, again, a little concerned. You're looking at a 23-year-old playing against a lot of 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. There's going to be some influence there in terms of what his production looks like. He's obviously been great in college, but it's not every single 23-year-old's just not coming into the NBA and maintaining that level of dominance going forward, because the league is just better than college basketball as a whole. 17, I have Cameron Carr. This is a 3-year college product. Spent the first couple of years for Rick Barnes at Tennessee, transferred to Baylor, and under Scott Drew completely took off. And I feel like the words took off are such a great way to describe him. This kid's got springs in his shoes, extremely quick and explosive, leaves his feet incredibly well, gets up in the air. Just an absolutely great athlete. And it shows up in his fast break points this year, scoring in transition. But really, he's got a role player star diet already in the shot department, because he scores at the rim at an incredible rate and level. A lot of his shots come at the rim, but then the remainder of his shots, for the most part, come from behind the three-point line, and he shoots it with real legitimate range as well. So Cam Carr for me is a guy who has been super impactful, and one thing that I need to draw your attention to specifically is his on-off swing numbers for Baylor this year. The Bears did not have a good season. Very up and down for them, 16-16 throughout the year. Disappointing for Baylor's standards. But when Cam Carr was on the floor, this team was actually good. They outscored their opponents by a significant margin with him on the court, and they were outscored without him on the floor this season. So if you're looking at kind of a contrast between the first Baylor Bear we talked about in this video, and Tounde Yessoufou, and Cameron Carr was way more productive toward winning. I feel like his skill set fits in the NBA very well. He can attack gap help on stampede drives and finishes. He can be a transition nightmare as a lob finisher. Get out and run, but then he also can shoot the three ball extremely well with legitimate range, off of movement, off of a standstill, creates a little bit for himself off the bounce too. So basically all of the boxes you're checking for a role-playing wing, Cameron Carr can fill. Now we'll see where he actually goes on draft night, but have him at number 17. I'm very optimistic about his fit in the NBA. I think all of the athletic traits and all of his skills fit very well around other talent. So for me, the eye test, the analytics, they all stand to point to Cameron Carr being a quality player early in his NBA career. Number 16, I landed with Braden Burries. This is one of the players I struggled the most with placing. As I go throughout my big board, I shuffle a lot of guys around. Braden Burries was always someone I wouldn't even rank on the list. I'd put him down at the very bottom of my notes, and I'd say, okay, where do I want to put Braden Burries? If you would have asked me a month ago, he probably would have been in the high 20s, or in the low 20s, like 20 to 22 range. But then the Big 12 tournament just kind of started to shift me toward, like, man, this guy's really legit. Like, a lot of really good stuff that he does that doesn't go in the box score, whether it's just getting off the basketball at the right time, moving the ball, not playing selfishly, and that's a really hard thing to do for freshmen. And this is where I should have given Koa Peat some love as well. To be Braden Burries and Koa Peat and be such big, integral parts of great programs, it's hard to be selfless at times. It's hard to put the team before yourself, especially when you're playing for your draft stock. But I feel like Braden Burries has really played within himself. Even the bad moments in his career at Arizona, it's usually not a bad process. It just doesn't get the result that you're looking for at times. And I feel like his relocation shooting has been a real weapon for Arizona, for a team that really does not shoot enough three-pointers. That'll be one of their biggest question marks going into March Madness. That might be a problem for them. If the team gets hot, Arizona is going to be liable to fall possibly. But like, Braden Burries has been so instrumental for them in getting that three-point volume back. And then also like finding opportunities, whether it's in transition off the ball, off of offensive rebounds, relocating, finding a little bit of open space. But then he also drives it decently well. He kicks it when he's supposed to. Just does a lot of really nice things. I think this is a guy who probably projects to be more of a 2 than a true point guard or lead guard in the NBA, which is okay, which is why his ceiling for me isn't in the high quality starter tier. It's just starter caliber, but has me very excited for what he's going to be in the NBA. Staying on the topic of Arizona, there is Momcilovic, who has been just unbelievable for the Wildcats this season, and has been arguably the very best rim protector in all of college basketball this year. I have him at number 15 for that exact reason. Now, he is a junior. He's a little bit of an older prospect, but you can't teach size. And specifically, one thing that I love about Krivas, his activity level in drop coverage. And this is something Tommy Lloyd and the Arizona Wildcats coach extremely well. Drop coverage isn't just a, hey, let's sit in the paint and wait for them to drive to us to deter the paint. It starts at the level of the screen if you coach it well and you employ it well. And that's what Momcilovic does. He impacts the basketball and then retreats. And that's exactly what you want to see. His mobility skills stand out to me. In a lot of ways, he reminds me a little bit of Jakob Poeltl, but I think he's a more mobile and slightly bigger version of Jakob Poeltl. And Jakob Poeltl's been a multi-year, many year starter in the NBA. I think Momcilovic can be even better than Jakob Poeltl defensively. And then offensively, I think he can have quality impact. Now, you might be wondering, okay, if this guy's the best rim defender in all of college basketball this season, how is he not higher on your board? I do have questions about the finishing as a whole. He's not this elite dominant rim finisher like you'll see from some of the other bigs we're going to talk about here shortly. He's a little bit less than like optimal for rim finishing, especially at his size. But part of that you could chalk up maybe to Arizona's offensive system as well. The fact that they don't take a lot of threes. So I think Krivas adjusting to the NBA, you put him with the right player, you put him with the right guard specifically, you can score off the bounce out of pick and roll. Krivas should be just fine offensively. I'm not super concerned about it. I think the dream fit for Krivas would be landing with the Los Angeles Lakers. Could you imagine this guy next to Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic going forward? Oh my goodness, that would be great for him. But man, Krivas, I'm very, very excited about him. Bigs are always consistently undervalued. And this year going into my big board, I tell myself I want no outside influence. It's so hard to actually follow through with that year after year. So like for me, it's just like I'm putting the guys that I really believe in, and Mo Krivas is one of those guys, and I'm gonna trust my process here. I'm gonna trust my evaluation. This guy, he's going to help you win at the rim. That's the name of the game in the NBA right now. It's all about efficiency. When you have a big who can impact the ball at the level of the screen, but then retreat and drop and still deter and shut off the paint in a lot of ways, it's going to be really difficult to bet against a guy like Mo Krivas in general. Moving into number 14, I have Jaden Quaintance. And this is the hardest player to rank here, arguably, because we've only gotten to see him for 4 games this season for Kentucky, transferred in from Arizona State a year ago. And for Arizona State last year, he was one of the best rim defenders in the entire country. His block rate was through the roof. Arizona State's defense was only good when he was on the floor, and it was completely god-awful without him. And he was doing this all as a 17-year-old. Remember, he was too young to be draft eligible in 2025, despite reclassifying up to play college basketball a year early. He was an absolute freak as a 17-year-old boy playing against men in college basketball. And then unfortunately tore his ACL. We've had to wait. We don't really get to see him. Plays a few games this year, just really didn't have the same impact. We'll see if he returns for March Madness or not. But it's like, for me, last year was so jarringly good that I have to still show respect to him as who he could be as a prospect. And I think the upside's higher because the athletic tools are very, very good. Arizona State was kind of a mess the entire year last year, so I'm just not going to put a whole ton of stock into some of the offensive concerns that we saw from Quaintance. I think with the right guard play, the right point guard, specifically the right offensive system and spacing, which we'll probably be more likely to see in the NBA as well for Quaintance, like his game could really take off in a big way. He's got some unbelievable physical tools, and again, he was doing this as a 17-year-old boy in college basketball, which is just unbelievable. So it's a real testament to who he is. I hope to God he can get healthy and we can really see him on the floor as soon as March Madness here this year. But worst case scenario, if he impresses in draft workouts and the combine and he shows up healthy on the medicals, then it's not going to be out of the question to see him drafted in the lottery while only still playing 4 games poorly this year for Kentucky because of that injury. Number 13, I landed here with Dalen Swain as someone who has some legitimate starter potential and upside in the NBA, and the guy who I've been very impressed with at Texas this year because of his ability to create off the bounce. He actually ranked in the 100th percentile in isolation efficiency throughout the NCAA regular season for Division I players. And while Texas hasn't had an elite season or a great season, a lot of their success has stemmed from who Dalen Swain has been. And I think if you look at his statistical profile, he's been impactful in a lot of different ways outside of just scoring the ball in isolation. He passes the ball effectively well, especially for his size. This guy is a real eye test and analytics match made in heaven. You watch him play, you can walk away from the TV saying, wow, that boy's nice, because he's got a really great left to right crossover, can beat guys off the bounce. The pull-up games looked way better this season. The shot numbers are all way up from his time at Xavier as well. So Dalen Swain's been just absolutely super fun to watch this year, and the numbers suggest that he should be a lottery pick this year as well. So I've been very excited about his play. Hopefully Texas can make a little bit of a run in the NCAA tournament as well. That would be awesome to get more people on board and hyped up with Dalen Swain going into the tournament and as we go through a March Madness here. But have him at number 13 right now. He's one of those guys kind of right in this range where it's hard for me to find a spot where I'm like, yes, that's the exact right spot for me to put Dalen Swain. But he's been awesome this year, and it's really hard to bet against a guy with his on-ball talent. And I think that translation to the NBA is going to be attacking closeouts, doing some secondary, ancillary scoring opportunities, kind of like what we saw from Cedric Howard this year off of John Morant, off of guys like Jaren Jackson Jr. early in his Memphis tenure. And Dalen Swain, he could be another guy we talk about with the Memphis Grizzlies. They have a couple picks in the first round this year. He seems like a Grizzlies type of player, honestly, with the recent draft track record and successes. And that's been one of my favorite mocks in my mock draft. So we'll see where Dalen Swain lands. I do think he'll be a top 20 pick on draft night, and he's a really deserving player to have in those discussions as well. Number 12, I have Henry Veesaar out of UNC. One of my favorite players in this entire draft. Now, while I don't necessarily see that high-quality starter upside, I see it very, very likely that he returns starting caliber play in the NBA early on. And some people are going to be surprised that I have him over Mo Krivas, where a lot of other people on draft Twitter and a lot of other draft analysts seemingly like Krivas a little bit more. I went back and looked at some of the numbers for Henry Veesaar defensively at Arizona under Tommy Lloyd in that defensive system. Henry Veesaar was quite productive and impactful defensively there too. So it's not just all Mo Krivas. I think there's a lot of that system in play too. But you look at what UNC's been this year with Henry Veesaar, they are a night and day different team with him and without him. Without him, they are awful. He is really the glue that is tying everything together. He is the yarn that is keeping things afloat. His impact metrics are through the roof, and then you also, just looking at him from an eye test standpoint, there's really not a better example of a perfect trail big man in this draft class. While Jaden Quaintance and Mo Krivas maybe have some questions about their offensive versatility and their rim finishing successes, Henry Veesaar dominates at the rim, shooting around 80% this year at the rim, and a lot of that coming off some post scoring as well, because he's got some really great touch, footwork. He can get to a right bump shoulder hook shot. Really, really nice stuff that he's got in his game, where he can get to that right baby hook. He can put your left shoulder into you, carve out some of that space. He's got a drop step. He's got a spin that he can go to. All of that stuff will lend itself to finding success against mismatches and in tight spaces. But really the biggest thing is when you're looking at a delayed big man where he's coming down the floor as a trailer, he can shoot it off the top of the key. The three-point shot has really evolved this year. Almost every single time he shoots it, I feel like it's going in when I'm watching the games. And then secondly, like, he can process off the top of the key. He can flow into dribble handoffs. We've seen him set up Caleb Wilson time and time again this year in mid-post opportunities and split action and just making the right read consistently. I just feel like every time I watch Henry Veesaar, I walk away saying, this guy's really damn good at basketball. And it's gotten to a point where I just cannot deny him as a lottery level type of player in this draft. While I know everyone else is going to be probably significantly lower on him, I feel in the way about Henry Veesaar the way that I did about Walker Kessler coming out of Auburn, where, hey, Jabari Smith Jr. was the guy getting all the love for the Auburn Tigers. Walker Kessler's been the better professional basketball player so far. Now, will that be the case for Henry Veesaar compared to Caleb Wilson? Maybe not. This is not meant to be an indictment on Caleb Wilson at all, but Henry Veesaar is really, really good, and I think while he's been overshadowed by the hype for Caleb Wilson, Henry Veesaar right now, today, is the more functional NBA player. Now, I do think Caleb Wilson, his ceiling is significantly higher. I have him higher on my big board, but right now, today, Henry Veesaar, you drop him in the NBA, he's going to be a good, productive center from day one of his NBA career, in my opinion. Moving on to 11, this is where things got really tricky for me. I landed on Keaton Wagler here out of Illinois, and I decided that I'm not going to label Keaton Wagler with high-quality starter upside, and this is where things became very tricky for me because there's a collection and slew of guards in here that are going to split hairs, and you're going to pull your hair out wondering, am I making the right choice on my final big board? For me with Keaton Wagler, what I'm concerned about is the play style. He's very off the dribble reliant, and like it's going to sound contradictive, right? Because for some other guys, I'm going to say, wow, their ability to create off the bounce is so special. For Keaton Wagler, like, he's done that, but he's also very pick and roll reliant in my opinion, and his 2-point shot volume, and this again is going to sound contradictive, and this is why I'm having troubles here. Like, Keaton Wagler does not have good 2-point success as a jump shooter. Very low volume, mid-range twos, not super productive on them. And like the thing about that, then it makes me question, okay, what's his shot making diet like really look like in the NBA against drop coverage and defenders who chase over the top of screens better? What if he can't create separation and isolation as consistently? And then the question also becomes, okay, well, what's the overall volume here? And he's made 65 above the break threes this year, and he had a game where he made 9. And that game was really special against Purdue. He dropped 46 points. But if you take that one best game out of his sample size, then you're starting to say, okay, like, how reliable is this guy as a three-point jump shooter, especially given the fact coming into the year he wasn't on a lot of first-round radars. And I don't want to diminish what he's done. He has warranted himself being a lottery pick, and that's why he's still 11th on my big board. I just have concerns about, like, okay, if the shot's not falling, where else is his impact coming from? He's got a little bit of a lower steal rate compared to guys like Michael Brown Jr., LeBaron Philon. So, there's some physical questions for me. The rim volume isn't perfect either. I still like his game. I like his ability off the bounce. He is very creative with the handle. He can score with the handle. That stuff matters to me. So, and he's got really solid positional size too. So there's a reason he's still top 14 on my board. I don't want it to, it sounded very pessimistic there. I don't want it to come across pessimistic because I do believe in him clearly. I have him in the lottery on my board. So if I didn't believe in him, he would not be up here at number 11. So keep that in mind, but I am expressing some concerns that I have as well. Number 10, I landed with Bennett Sturts here. And while I think the upside is a little bit capped for Bennett Sturts, I see almost no way that he doesn't return some form of starting caliber quality. Now, he might not be a full-time starter in the NBA. He might not start 82 games a year or anything like that. But you look at a guy like Ty Jerome, who last year for Cleveland was tremendous. This year for Memphis, he's been awesome for them when he's been on the floor and actually healthy. He wasn't starting in those stretches of play. Is he not a starting caliber player? That's mostly what I mean. Like, Bennett Sturts might not be the starter for a team, but he'll be a starting caliber player, kind of like what Peyton Pritchard's been in his NBA career too, where he's returned starting caliber play for Boston while being on an incredibly cheap contract and coming off the bench. And that's okay, and it's actually great. One of the best things you can have for your team is have multiple starting caliber players at certain positions, especially point guard. And Sturts, for me, is a guy who I think is ready to take off in a big way once he gets to the NBA. You might know everything about Ben McCollum in Iowa, their tenure from Division II to Drake to Iowa this year. Not only has Bennett Sturts scaled up every single year and succeeded at a high level for that situation, but he also plays in a super slow pace environment for Ben McCollum, where there's a lot of play calls. There's a lot of, hey, let's get the ball here, set up our offense. We're going to be very direct and manipulative in the way that we play. And I think once you get Bennett Sturts, someone who is such a smart processor or thinks one or two steps ahead of everyone else on the court at all times, seemingly, you put him into a higher pace environment where he's running in transition more. He's getting hit-ahead passes. He's getting out in 3-on-2, 4-on-3 advantages in transition offense. Everything's just going to feel so much easier for him because there's going to be more space. There's going to be more pace to work with. And I think it's going to help escalate his game. And oh, by the way, he's been incredibly efficient every step of the way. He's been impactful defensively. And I would dare to say he's the best conditioned athlete in this entire draft class. Now, he's not the best athlete in general. He doesn't jump the highest, that's for sure. But he plays almost every single meaningful minute that his team has had the last couple of years, whether it's Drake in the NCAA tournament or this year Iowa in Big Ten play. If the game's close, if the game's tight, you know he's on the court because he's well-conditioned, he's in shape, and with that slower pace, he's been able to stay on the court. But when you draft him to an NBA franchise, he's going to step in. He'll play those meaningful minutes that he's supposed to play, whatever that looks like as a starter or coming off the bench. You know he's going to be in shape and ready to play for you as well. So I think that's a little nugget that I think it's not the biggest deal. A lot of these guys are in really great shape, but Bennett Sturts, this guy is an Iron Man. He does not get tired, seemingly. So, testament to him, and he can make shots off the bounce as well. I have LeBaron Philon at 9 and Michael Brown Jr. at 8. And I think if you look at the tiering here for them, I feel very confident in both of them returning starting caliber play. And for me, LeBaron Philon actually has the slightly higher upside. Now, that might be a little surprising to people because Michael Brown Jr. has the better deep range. He shoots a high volume of threes. But I think for LeBaron Philon, you're looking at one of the best paint touch guards in the NBA draft this year, where he can get downhill, he can get to whatever spot in the court he wants. And surprisingly, Alabama, you think about them as an offensive juggernaut, this team doesn't really have a lot of elite offensive players. You think about Aiden Holloway, who might not really be able to play in March Madness. A very unfortunate situation. I think the decision Alabama is making on that is a little short-sighted and a little silly, to be completely honest with you. But LeBaron Philon himself at number 9, like, the upside is immense here, where he could be an awesome downhill guard. His sophomore season has been a real revelation compared to his freshman year, where playing alongside Mark Sears, he did a lot of the little stuff, but wasn't necessarily the go-to guy, and he didn't have the ball in his hands consistently. But then this year, with the higher usage, the higher reliance for him from Alabama and from Nate Oates on their offense, he's been better. He's been better at the rim. He's been significantly better from three. Clearly has built up a rhythm with the ball in his hands. And it's also a testament to the work that he put in between his freshman season to now. The fact that the volume has ticked upward, the responsibility has ticked upward, and so has the efficiencies. It's a sign of someone who has worked really hard to get better. I've constantly thought back to sophomore season Ja Morant at Murray State. And I'm not comparing Phylon to Morant at all. They're very different, okay? But Ja Morant's freshman season at Murray State and the film and the analytics there compared to his sophomore year were night and day different. And Ja Morant elevated his play and really worked on himself as a player to make himself the second overall pick. And I feel like we're in a very similar situation here where LeBaron Phylon was already turning heads as a freshman, worked on his game a ton over the summer, came back as a much, much better player, was an SEC all-first team type of contributor and performer this year for Alabama, and the Crimson Tide guard is destined to be a good, high-quality pickup here in the 2026 NBA draft. Michael Brown Jr., talking about pedigree, boy, what a summer did he have this past year for Team USA play. And that's really one of the biggest things that's going to keep him in my lottery at the very least. Even at the beginning of the year when the season started slow for him at Louisville, I was not doubting his talent level. We got to see him on the world stage playing next to guys like Cam Boozer, and he stole the show. He was absolutely awesome. And even when the going got tough here for Louisville, he dealt with some injury stuff. The numbers weren't looking pretty. I never really lost the faith in who he can be as a player. And as he got healthy toward the back end of the season, he started to pop again. The three-point shot started falling. We got to see some of the awesome deep range. We got to see some of the highlight moments from him. And then the steal rate improved. A lot of the analytic numbers improved. He's an impressive shot maker. Now, again, I would love to see the rim volume tick up, especially in contrast to a guy like LeBaron Phylon. But Michael Brown Jr., the biggest thing about him is he's got the range, and you can do so many different things off of that if he's going to draw so much attention from deep. Again, the point guard position is probably the most heavily populated in the NBA right now, but when a guy can really shoot it and draw defenses out the way that Michael Brown Jr. can, there's going to be a world and there's going to be a market for him consistently going forward into his NBA career, in my opinion. Now at number 7, I have Patrick Ngungba II, and I have him as a potential high-quality starter. Last year, I fell in love with Duke Blue Devil big man Kaman Maluach, who I still really hold a lot of stock in. I know Phoenix hasn't maybe given him the minutes this year we were hoping to see, but trust me, I think Kaman Maluach is still going to be a really, really awesome big man in the NBA. I think Patrick Ngungba's got a lot of awesomeness to him as well, but in a different way than Maluach. Maluach, big, very physical, a freak of nature athletically in a lot of ways. Ngungba's a little bit more calculated, high IQ player. His dad played college basketball at a very high level. And Ngungba II here for Duke in his sophomore season has taken massive strides. Now, unfortunately, he missed the ACC tournament. He's kind of in question right now for March Madness as a whole. It's a huge loss for Duke if he doesn't get to show out at all in March Madness. But either way, Ngungba's done the work to really solidify his draft stock in my estimation. His defensive impact this year has been off the charts for the Duke Blue Devils. He's a really quality rebounder. And then I talked about delay action. We hyped up Henry Vasar, his ability to make reads off the top of the key, flow into dribble handoff, shoot the ball. While Ngungba hasn't shot the ball at a great clip yet, he's done a lot of the other stuff for John Shire with a very off-ball movement-oriented offense like the Blue Devils run. And Ngungba's been capable of making reads, playing high-low with Cam Boozer, operating as a passer to Isaiah Evans on all their flare action and slip action and split action, everything that they do. So Ngungba, I mean, like, this, when you have a guy who is huge, big, impactful defensively, rebounds the ball extremely well, blocks shots, and oh, by the way, he can process and make a lot of reads off the top of the key, it's hard for me to not fall in love with a player like that. Because it's like, hey, anything I want to do as a coach, this guy's probably going to be able to functionally do that for me. Which is why I don't really see a world where he's not a starting caliber big man in the NBA. And very possibly could be a high quality starter. Now, I think that's like a top 35-ish percentile outcome for him as a high quality starting player. More likely than not, he just ends up being a good starter. But that's still awesome. And that warrants a top 10 pick in the NBA draft consistently if you can get a guy who is a 8 to 12 year starter for you. That's very, very good. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the returns of NBA drafts and what they look like. Patrick Ngungba is going to be a very good player. Centers constantly get undervalued. He's going to get drafted way lower than he probably should be, but whichever team gets him is going to get an awesome, awesome player at their center spot. Moving on to the top 6 and 5 here with Darius Acuff Jr. and Kingston Flemings. And I do see, for the first time in this entire big board, some all-star potential for these two. Don't have a lot of all-star upside throughout this video up to this point, but Acuff Jr. and Kingston Flemings both have some of that pop to their game. I want to start with Darius Acuff Jr., who is the number 5 player on my big board right now, and I'm telling you, I've worked really hard to not have him this high. I have my concerns, which is why his floor is significantly lower even outside of the starter tier a little bit, because he is a very bad defender, especially from an actual attention to detail and effort standpoint. There's essentially zero ball pressure that you're ever going to get from him guarding the ball, which is why Arkansas has tried to do their best to hide him away from the ball. Now, he has stepped up at moments. I think about that SEC tournament game against Vanderbilt. He took on the Tyler Tanner assignment for a decent majority of that game, and he won that matchup. So, well, even though I've had my reservations about Darius Acuff Jr. and some of the concerns, like I can't argue the pedigree, I can't argue the consistency, and I can't argue the production. And so I want you to know, for anyone who's watching from Analtyics FC right now, I went through the process. I tried to discredit Darius Acuff. I meet every single thing with skepticism for all of these prospects. It gets to a point with a player like Acuff where he hits so many big shots so consistently. He shoots so well from behind the three-point line. He's a real quality 3-level scorer. He pushes pace extremely well. His pace influence for Arkansas, I think, is one of the bigger things. Their pace upticks pretty drastically with him on the floor, which is one of the biggest selling points for him in the NBA. He does a really nice job making himself available as an outlet guy so that he can push and go. And you look back to that SEC championship game against Vandy. First of all, he had 30 and 10, so he did his normal box score stuff. But at the start of that game, even when the shot wasn't falling, he had a couple of turnovers. There were a few times where he caught an outlet and threw an extra hit-ahead pass, whether it was to Billy Richmond or to Trevin Brazil, and kind of kickstarted the Arkansas offense. And then you also look at how he read gap help in that game against Vandy when they sent a second body. Trevin Brazil hit 4 3-pointers in that game, and all of them came off of Darius Acuff Jr.'s gravity. So if you look at what Acuff can be in the NBA, the upside is just so absurd. The defensive limitations are real, and I have questions about the three-point attempt rate. I would love to see it be higher because he's just such an awesome three-point shooter. I'd like to see more three-point pull-up volume, especially off of pick and roll. A lot of it comes out of isolation right now where he is able to create off the bounce himself. I do like the skills, and as a whole, I am a believer because the passing is also very, very pristine and good. Draws to, understands how to open up space to make passes. Now, I do think right now specifically he's going to be most challenged by bigger, longer defenders. Someone like Dame Sarr, I think, would give him a real challenge, which is why I would love to see an Arkansas versus Duke matchup at some point in the NCAA tournament. Although I don't think we're going to get that. It would be awesome for these prospect evaluations. We'd get a lot of answers about Acuff, about Dame Sarr, about both of those guys. From a head-to-head matchup between Duke and Arkansas. But I'm a big believer in Acuff. I've tried to talk myself against him for a majority of this process, not from a criticism standpoint or a hate standpoint, but I do that with everybody. I look at all the pros, all the cons, and I know the cons for Acuff are pretty loud, but there's nothing more loud than the makes for him. He has just been dynamite this year. So as much as I try to talk myself against him, I just can't at this point. I have him number 5 on my big board. I understand why some people would maybe make long-term bets on Michael Brown or LeBaron Philon or Keaton Wagler over him, but he's been so good. His resume is unbelievable. The only player in this draft who has a better actual resume dating back through high school is Cam Boozer, honestly. He's been that good. SEC Player of the Year, led the SEC in scoring, over 6 assists a game, just unbelievable stuff. And then Kingston Flemings, following up that Acuff discussion, it might be a little underwhelming, but Flemings, I think it's a little bit more simple for him. I think, first of all, he's been a more active defender than Acuff this year, which is why the floor is a little bit higher as just a surefire starting caliber player. I also think the shot diet is very NBA ready. He can create space in a pinch whenever he wants with a little step back. He does a nice job carving out that space in the mid-range area. Now, funny enough, for some reason, there's not as big of a discussion around Kingston Fleming's needing to alter his shot diet. And I'm going to hold myself accountable. I talked about Acuff wanting to see more three-point volume. Kingston Fleming does not shoot enough threes. For how skilled of a shooter he is, we need to see him shoot more threes. And now you might say, well, that's partially on Kelvin Sampson, it's partially on Houston Cougars offense. I definitely understand that, but we need to see Flemings do it. And just like we're going to talk and we're going to criticize Darius Acuff, who plays the majority of the games he plays hurt, we need to hold Kingston Flemings accountable in a lot of the same ways. I was digging through the numbers. The Houston Cougars defensively are 12 points per 100 possessions worse with Kingston Flemings on the court than they are without him. When he's off the floor, they are better defensively by 12 points per 100 possessions. I cross-checked those numbers. I looked at Milos Uzan. I looked at Emmanuel Sharp, some of the other Houston Cougar guards. Those numbers are not true for them. So it is a Kingston Flemings issue individually. Now, I think it does say a lot about Houston in general. I think it says a lot about the other defensive talent. They've got some very good defenders, especially in that backcourt with Uzan and Sharp specifically. Like, those two guys are great defenders, and they're older. Those are guys that are going to be in my top 60, top 70-ish prospects in this draft class as well. So it's not to completely discredit Kingston Flemings as a player, but we have to be aware of what those numbers are saying too, just like we have to with Darius Acuff Jr. So even with how great Kingston Flemings has been this year, and at times he's been magical, he's been a huge floor lifter offensively for Houston, which is why he's number 6 on my big board right now. There are some concerns that I am at least monitoring going into March Madness play as well. All right, we're getting to that part of the video that everyone wants to see, the top 4. And remember that tiering. If you're seeing how this is shaping up right now, I have a pretty significant gap here between Patrick Ngungba. I have a pretty significant gap here between Ngungba and Flemings. And I have another sizable gap here between Caleb Wilson and Darius Acuff Jr. Because I do think at this point, I have almost solidified on Caleb Wilson being the number 4 player in this class for me. And I have him at all-NBA potential, just barely. Like, he's just barely touching. Like, the 100th percentile outcome is that Caleb Wilson can be a all-NBA contributor. Now, I do think it's very possible he becomes an all-star caliber player in the NBA because of his two-way impact. He's got some incredible physical traits and gifts and a lot of runway to accessing those when it comes to his mid-range scoring, his post-up game, mid-post, a little bit of self-creation when it comes to two-point volume. There is some eye-popping stuff that he's done from an eye test standpoint, but there are also some concerns. This year, he only made 7 three-pointers the entire year. And guess what? 6 of them were assisted. So we're looking at almost no unassisted three-point volume, only 1 unassisted three-pointer made this season. Like, for people to be putting him number 1 or number 2 in this class, like, you're really relying on projection, and you're really relying on development. And while that's definitely possible, and again, I'm not sitting here holding a crystal ball, what I am sitting here is after looking at all of the film and watching every game that I possibly could and watching nearly every single possession that Caleb Wilson has had this year offensively for UNC, and the film right now doesn't suggest that he will be a two-way superstar. It suggests that he could be a two-way all-star. It suggests that he could be a very, very, very functional player, a very good player, one of the better cutters in the NBA, one of the better ducking guys, one of the best transition finishers, an awesome defensive player who makes unbelievably great moments happen time and time again in the NBA, which is why he's number 4 for me with a very big gap between him and the number 5 prospect on my board. The issue is the film isn't as good as it is for the other top 3 guys in this draft. It just, quite frankly, isn't. Dating back to high school, it's just not in that ballpark. It really isn't. And I think there's been a lot of benefits that he's had playing for UNC next to a guy like Henry Versar. And it's not surprising that Vesar's impact on-off for the on-off swings this year for UNC has been greater than it has been for Caleb Wilson, because Vesar's been the better college performer in some ways than Caleb Wilson. Now, Wilson's got the points. Wilson's got the elite moments, the crazy one-hand flushes in transition, the lob dunks, the unbelievable steals with full extension. He has all of the wow, whoa moments. I'm not going to discredit that. But from a functionality standpoint, there's still a lot of room to grow for him. I hope to God he gets there, because if he does, oh my goodness, watch out. He could be an absolute freak in the NBA. But it's just going to take a little bit of time for him to get there to live up to that possible Again, possible All-NBA upside, but at the very worst, I do think there's a good likelihood he makes an All-Star game, and at the very worst, he is going to be a surefire starter in the NBA with a real likelihood of being a high-quality starter, which now moves us into my number 3 prospect, and that is Darren Peterson out of Kansas. I've gone back and forth on it, and again, we have another tier differential here between Caleb Wilson and Darren Peterson. I have Peterson as the number 3 prospect in this draft right now, with near all-time great potential, Hall of Fame potential, almost certainly going to be an All-NBA contributor at some point, and will certainly be an All-Star in his NBA career. I'm very certain, and I would bet on that at this point in time. Now, I do have a lot to say about Darren Peterson. First of all, I think Kansas has miscast him this year. I think Bill Self has misutilized him at times. We've seen him primarily just running off of off-ball screens and functioning as a movement shooter. He's being essentially utilized as Duncan Robinson or Kevin Huerter when he's really a high-quality shot maker who should be in ball screens, getting to read the court in middle third pick and roll consistently. And it's just not the way Kansas plays under Bill Self. And anyone who watches Kansas play knows that. And I'm not sitting here and hating on Bill Self. He's a heck of a coach. He's won a lot. But clearly Bill Self is not coaching in a way that is setting up Darren Peterson solely for his best individual success. And that's not Bill Self's job either, by the way. Bill Self's job description doesn't say, hey, let's try and get Darren Peterson drafted first overall. His job description says, let's win games. And he does do that for Kansas. But you can also understand that, hey, maybe if Darren Peterson was playing in Kevin Young's system and he was running middle third ball screen consistently and he was getting all of these opportunities on the ball, his tape would look different and his numbers would look different. And I'm certain his success would look different. If you go back to the high school film, the high school numbers, he was given those opportunities, and boy, did he pop as a shot maker in those areas. And I think specifically the projection with Darren Peterson really stems on tough shot making. And this is one of the best things about evaluation that makes it so fun. You could look at the process and say, hey, Darren Peterson right now looks a little shot reliant. His rim volume's not very good in college. Part of that's the hamstring, part of that's the cramping, part of that's playing alongside Flory Badunga and Bryson Tiller and not having a lot of spacing around him or the right scheme and context. But a lot of it also suggests, hey, this guy's shot reliant and he's still really darn good. And guess what? You look at some of the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan. You look at LeBron James. You look at Kobe Bryant. You look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as of late. The best players in the NBA make tough shots all of the time. And Darren Peterson looks like one of those guys. He really does. Now, I've been seeing people compare him to Ray Allen. Again, I think that's what Bill Self has set up Darren Peterson to look like this year. I don't think that's what Darren Peterson is. I think Darren Peterson has been driven like a Corvette when he's more of a Lamborghini. And a Corvette's really fun to look at too. He's been awesome to watch this year. But I think Darren Peterson's a little bit closer to a Lambo than he is just a Corvette. And it's not to hate on Corvettes or anything, but Darren Peterson's one of those ones. He can make incredibly tough shots. He's an awesome, awesome player. Which leads me to my number 2 player in this draft class, AJ Dybantsa out of BYU. Very similarly to what we talked about with Darren Peterson, I have Hall of Fame potential, possible all-time great, like right in that stratosphere. And then you're looking at an All-NBA contributor and a surefire All-Star. AJ Dybantsa is going to be a 25 to 30 point per game scorer pretty easily in his NBA career. And now there's a lot of discussion, right? Like you get the analytics people versus the eye test people. Here's the thing. You can evaluate in whatever way you want. You just can't completely ignore the things as a hate watcher that you want to ignore. Like there's things about AJ Dybantsa statistically or analytically that I would love. I would love for more 3-point attempts. The question is, what's stopping him once he's in an NBA facility from at some point in time by year 2, 3, or 4 of his career taking more 3-pointers? Like what's stopping him from ultimately doing that at some point in time? Maybe the tendency just is hard to overwrite and overrule in his brain, but he'll get there at some point. I'm certain of it. Even if it's never an elite level of 3-point attempt rate, he'll get to an okay level. And like if you watch this guy play, man, he's got so many skills. He's got the best gather collection that I've ever seen for a prospect coming into an NBA draft. Like his ability to gather right to left, whether it's on a low gather with a little arm rip through, he's going to get to the free throw line a ton. His free throw rate's unbelievably gaudy. Like this guy is going to step into the NBA and he's going to be capable of scoring. And this year we saw development in front of our very own eyes. when it came to reading gap help and reading low side help. He's done so much better toward the end of the season at identifying those things, getting off of the basketball, making the right play at the right time. And I think there's just a level of accountability with him too, that he wants to be great. I know it's like hard. You don't know these guys personally. You want to like make all of your decisions off of analytics or off of film. But there's also something to be said about a guy who can take credit of saying like, yeah, I didn't live up to being the Big 12 Player of the Year this year, and we should have won more. And like something like that is a little inspiring about like, hey, what does his future hold, right? Because I'm not sitting here with the crystal ball. I can't tell you every single meaningful development step he'll take moving forward. But when you have a guy who wants to be great, who wants to work hard, like I think Darren Peterson and AJ Dybantsa both want to do, and they have the physical gifts, the tools, some on-ball scoring talent already at an elite level, whether it's the stride stop, the gather, the rip-throughs, the step-throughs, all of the different stuff that he's got, the athleticism. Like, he's going to be really, really good. Now, I do need to spend a second here talking about the defense for these two prospects. Darren Peterson right now is the better defender than AJ Dybantsa, and he has the better three-point attempt rate, which is why the ceiling's a little bit higher. But Dybantsa is going to get to the line very consistently. I think his rim volume is going to mature very, very well in the NBA, which is why I'm very comfortable in his floor relative to Darren Peterson, because I think the consistency on a night-to-night basis is going to, at some point, level out a little bit for AJ Dybantsa. But I do need to say this for Dybantsa. People are going to say, oh, he's going to be an elite defender. They're going to say, oh, he's going to be a great defender because he's athletic, he's big, he's a big forward. Like, they're going to say he's an elite defender. That's just not the case. It's not true, okay? I don't care what his combine measurements are. I don't care how long his arms are. I don't care how high he jumps. The defensive tape is terrible. It just is. He is very poor in screen navigation right now, and defense isn't just an effort thing. It's not just a size thing. If it was, Jose Alvarado and Jalen Brunson would be the same caliber of player. Jose Alvarado has elite defensive skills that he has developed over time. There are a lot of players who are very skilled defensively, whether it's their technique, their balance, their physical gifts that they actually employ defensively. While Dybantsa has some awesome physical gifts, and he uses them on occasion as a recovery shot blocker, things like that, it's not consistently put to work in terms of his screen navigation and his low man help and seeing the play in front of his own very eyes as a low man helper. So there are concerns. And the biggest thing with him, and this is what I've talked about with Kevin Durant a lot too, like Kevin Durant, one of the biggest issues I have with him in the year 2026 defensively, he is a somewhat lazy defender, understandably so. He's very old relative to the average NBA player. He's lazy, so if you put him in the corner and rely on him to be a helper, is he going to consistently make those rotations as the help man? The answer is probably not. The same question then is, okay, well, if you're going to put him in the corner, like clearly you're not going to have Kevin Durant guard the ball, so then what's his role defensively? If he's not going to consistently help and if he's not going to consistently defend the ball, what's his value on defense? And like the answer becomes a little problematic, as you can see. And I think AJ Dybantsa kind of falls into that same category as well. Now he's younger. I think the energy and effort's there. I just think it's a processing issue at this point in time and a technique issue for AJ Dybantsa, which is going to be a little problematic throughout his career early on, if I had to guess. Which leads me to my number one player in the draft, a guy who I think could genuinely end up being one of the all-time greats when it's all said and done, even to a greater extreme here than AJ Dybantsa or Darren Peterson, and that is Cameron Boozer out of Duke. This is one of the greatest prospects we have ever seen. I want to be very clear about that. He is tremendous. All of the analytic numbers just absolutely adore this guy. He is unbelievable. And there's a lot of stuff in it. I think the biggest thing for me to point out is the processing. Like, he's arguably the best passer in the draft. And he is about 6'10", and he's 240 pounds. And oh, by the way, he's about a half year younger than AJ Dybantsa and Darren Peterson, so he's nowhere near a finished product. He shoots the ball extremely well, maybe not quite as good as Darren Peterson, but he's a better three-point shooter than AJ Dybantsa. And skill set wise, he's very, very polished. Can thrive as a pick and roll passer, can thrive as a pick and roll man. Really good in transition, really good in isolation, can post up. I think the biggest skill set need for his game, and people are going to point to the game against Virginia and Ugonna and Yenso getting so many blocks against him. They're going to say, oh, the athleticism, the athleticism, the athleticism. The athleticism is not the issue. The concern for me right now is the skill set in the mid-range area. This year, he just has almost zero mid-range volume throughout the entire season, despite catching in the mid-post a lot. And if you think about when the going gets tough, where do the best players get going? It's typically that mid-post area. You look at guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, historically Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Dirk Nowitzki. The best guys, the unguardable spots on the floor are the middle of the floor, in that mid-post area where it's very difficult to double from because you can get easy rim assists or three-point assists from where the doubles come from. So you think about Jokic, you think about Joel Embiid, the areas of the floor they occupy. If Cameron Boozer wants to be that caliber of player, which is what I think he can be, he needs to develop a mid-range game, whether it's just a bump fade away. You know, LeBron saying I'm not a right bump shoulder fade kind of guy. Cam Boozer needs to become a right bump shoulder fade kind of guy, in my opinion, to really maximize who he can be. Because then once you post him up, if you send that double, he can fade off of it, and he can get to an up and under step through. It opens up a lot of his footwork. He already has very good footwork, but to maximize him, he does need a semblance of a mid-range game. That's my only concern right now. It has nothing to do with athleticism, and it has something to do with his missing skill set right now, which is that intermediate game. But if you look at him as a player, incredibly efficient around the rim, incredibly efficient as a three-point shooter, there's really no reason to believe that he can't score from the mid-range area right now. He just needs to develop it. And if you want to go back and look at Luka Doncic, his first year in the NBA, averaging about 21 points a game for the Mavericks as a rookie, my biggest takeaway after his rookie season was he needs a mid-range game. He needs to get to the intermediate spot of the floor where the defense really can't double him or blitz him effectively. And then what did he do the next year? He was one of the best post-up guards in the NBA, in NBA history arguably. He ballooned to 30 points a game pretty quickly in his career. And I think Cam Boozer is capable of that as well. Get him in the mid-post, add in a little bit of intermediate scoring. This guy's going to be virtually unguardable going forward because if you double him, he'll pass, make the right read all of the time, which is annoying to face and defend against because it's like, okay, well, we don't want to blitz him. And then you're just allowing your defenders to get cooked. You put a big on him. He's got the skill set and the footwork to beat you underneath, get to where he wants on the court. And then if you put a small on him, he's too big. So there's a lot of flexibility that his skill set and size provides. He's going to be so good. I love betting on the track record of kids whose dads played in the NBA as well. Cam Boozer comes from very good NBA lineage from Carlos Boozer. And in my opinion, he is just the best player in this draft from a skill set perspective. And once he adds in that mid-range game, he's going to be virtually unguardable. So here's a quick collective look at my 2026 NBA draft big board as it currently sits right now. Again, there's the top three: Caleb Wilson at 4, Acuff at 5, all the way down through Tounde Yessoufou. This will be posted up on Twitter as well, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Go leave a like over there, check out the Twitter. And again, don't forget to comment down below. Comment basketball sicko if you made it to this part of the video. Appreciate you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.